as you can imagine, because of the lockdown and lockdown getting repeatedly extended, at the current moment, the situation isn't very good. Some offices have started opening up in fractions because the laws in markets like Gurgaon and markets like Bangalore, etc., are slightly different from Maharashtra, particularly Mumbai. So there is some semblance of opening up. But until things don't start coming back to normal, until clients don't start selling their products, until their production doesn't start resuming in well, full force will take a long time, but at least in significant proportion, it is going to be a bit slow. But definitely, I get the feeling that the worst is probably behind us or will be behind us in another couple of weeks or so.
Okay, and like with your understanding of the ecosystem, we've seen that digital has disrupted communications and marketing over the past 2 decades, and Dentsu Aegis Network has been at the forefront of this digital revolution across geographies. I want to understand, like in the past, people used to embrace digital by choice, and thus the digital transformation was at a lower end. But now that they are embracing digital by force, what do you think is the current state for digital as a medium in these times?
Look, there was a clear trend, and we at Dentsu Aegis Network really believed in it. We put our money where our mouth was, and we invested very heavily. As you know, the market is last year, for example, was about 19-20% digital, but we get almost 50%, 47-48% of our revenues from digital. More than 2,200 of our 3,700 people are in digital. So we are very big believers in it. This is a trend which was already there, right? And it was growing at maybe 2.5 times the rate of the rest of the advertising. If you look at the Dan Digital report, it showed about 27-28%, about 30% in the past and 27% CAGR going forward, while the advertising industry was growing around 10% in that period. So almost 2.5-3 times. When you have a situation like these, which are seminal events in that sense, like the COVID situation, I think these accelerate consumer trends that are already there. Particularly in this instance where you had no option but to be digitally aligned, I think the one big benefit will be digital savviness of every client, of every media person, of every advertising person would perforce have gone up. One of the problems that I felt in digital in India was that, the decision makers who are probably 45, 50, 55 years of age in most organizations are not digital natives. For example, I'm not a digital native. I always say this. I first saw a computer in my MBA class at the age of 24 or something. The teacher would the professor would put it on the table and show you what it was, almost like something amazing. While my children today are born with computers or iPads almost from day one, right? So we are not a generation of digital natives, but this was the generation that had to make decisions, because everybody who was chief marketing officer or CEO, etc., would be 50 years plus of age. So there was a big sort of a disconnect in the industry, I felt. And it was improving over a period of time, but I think what this event will do is that it has forced everybody, whether you're 20 or you're 60, it doesn't matter what you are, you've been forced to jump into the digital world much faster and much more than what you were doing before. So I think this will only accelerate things a lot more. And people have also realized that there is so much you can do on digital, and there is so much you can do sitting at home, that it will change in many ways the way people have been thinking. So it's a trend which was there, the rapid digitization in India. We were big believers in it, and vocally so. I think it will get further accelerated as we go forward.
Okay. And speaking of this new normal of everyone embracing digital, how have agencies adapted to the new normal? Like in my conversation with a lot of agency owners, I hear talks about how pitches have started happening on Zoom and how they have got lockdown wins in this time frame by pitching for new business on a Zoom or a virtual call, or how Sam was talking about an ad being shot virtually, and so how directions are also happening on Zoom. So what are some of the specifications you've seen for agencies in adapting to this new normal? and how have agencies been able to transform their existing processes from offline to digital, right from brainstorming to pitching to even executing campaigns?
Look, I think there is nothing that teaches you faster than a compulsion, than a necessity. As they say, necessity is the mother of all invention. Everybody used to say that it's impossible to have a good creative product unless you have a brainstorm, a face-to-face meeting, etc., etc. And that is possibly true. But when there was no option of doing it, work had to happen around it, right? And nobody is more adaptive than us Indians. Jugaad is in our blood in that sense. And I think we took that on very well. To my mind, the best example of it actually, the part of our business which is most highly impacted, obviously, is the events business, right? In this industry, because
Yeah.
there are no events. I mean, by definition, lots of people gathering together is not going to happen. There are no events now, and is not going to happen for quite some time. The way things are. But I was very pleased to see that Fountainhead, in fact, which is one of our group companies, Fountainhead MKTG, they conducted a virtual event. It was for of course, for a good cause, for collecting money, and lots of stars participated. So even events have started moving virtual. In our China office, and China is a good example I always like to give, because China was the first market that got impacted by COVID, right? We have an office in Wuhan as well, and that was before the Chinese New Year itself. They had already gone into lockdown, so somewhere around third week of Jan, you could already feel that it is being locked off, right? So there was a launch of a car that had to happen, of a global brand, very prominent, and obviously you couldn't do the launch because they were in a prolonged lockdown, and they did a virtual streaming for 30 hours and a virtual event. And I can't remember the figures. It had hundreds of thousands of hits and visitors. But what was most pleasing was that whatever the client had anticipated, they were able to sell off that many or get bookings for that many cars without anybody ever getting out of their home or getting onto that. So I think agencies are adopting that, but this was done very suddenly and in an unplanned manner, naturally, because something suddenly came in. Some agencies like ours were slightly better prepared because we have our global BCP processes, and we had seen the rest of the region going through. So the larger agencies probably had some indication, but most of us were not that well prepared. I think now going forward, agencies are going to adapt to make sure that security issues, portable laptops of good quality for people, making sure sufficient bandwidth, whatever, all the technical stuff that needs to be done is going to be in place, because like you said, this could well be a part of our new normal. I think a lot of things are going to change. I mean, do we need such big offices with thousands of people working there, risking their lives, spending a lot of time coming in and out? Or can there be a virtual plus real model where some things happen on work from home, and for certain things, probably you do need to come there? So I think all agencies are going to have to start doing that. They're being pretty adaptive at the moment. A lot of efforts are going on, but it's not the same thing. It's okay to feel very good that we've shot a few commercials on people sitting at home, and it's a good achievement on iPhone sometimes, and so on and so forth, and that's a good achievement. But that's not the permanent standard where you want the industry to be. So in the new normal, so this is fine as crisis management, but in the new normal, you will have to find ways to live with this and find ways around it. How do we, if it suddenly happens, how do we still continue much better production qualities, much more regular production than what we've been able to do now on that? Pitches, etc., of course, like you mentioned, have happened. Some of them have happened, some of them have concluded, etc. So it's good that it's moving in that direction, but this was suddenly thrust upon us. I think the new normal, will be better prepared as an industry, and we'll be better geared up for handling it, I feel.
Okay, and threading from your thoughts on whether we could have like a virtual plus real model, or so do you think in the next probably 6 to 12 or 18 months we would be working as remote agencies, or there will be like probably 20-30% of the workforce working from offices, or like whatever the or like probably lesser than that, and the others would again be working remotely? So what is your preference when it comes to choosing between remote versus a minimally real plus virtual model. And probably I could ask the audiences also to share their thoughts whether they would prefer working remotely at this point in time or and in the next 6 months, or they would want to do it virtual. Guys, you can comment with remote slash virtual plus real. Yeah.
Look, I have in the past never been a big fan of working from home. Like I've always said, I have never worked from home. In fact, I've hardly ever taken leave, even if I'm not well. I've never worked from home ever before this, right? But I have to say, this has taught us that a lot can be done from that. But that doesn't mean that one should get carried away. The problem with us Indians is that we swing from one end of the pendulum to the other. Before this, everybody was working from the office. We had very fixed hours. We were almost like a factory. You have to come in at 9:30. You have to work till 6 o'clock every day of the week, etc., etc. You can't swing from that pendulum to saying that nobody will ever come to office and everything will be. It's not going to happen in that way. So I think the combination is going to be a mixture of both. But most important thing, first of all, is going to be safety. The vaccine isn't yet found. We're still going to be in a process which is coming out, from very strict kind of lockdowns. So I think it's going to happen in stages. While there will be government policies, there will also be company policies. So, for example, we have taken a decision that we are going to lag, not lead. So even if the government were to allow that tomorrow morning 50% people could come in, we probably just do it in a little more phased manner, etc. Just see how things are settling. So the next 6 months will probably go in the settling down and people sort of coming back in that. But eventually, where I think it will settle is that the amount of work from home compared to what it was, let's say pre-February, January, or whatever, will definitely go much higher. Agencies will also start considering, why do we need such big offices, right? Like I've said, so you probably may have a new office tomorrow, which will have many meeting rooms, which may have many pods where you can go into work. But because there will be some, I don't think permanent work and only work from home is ever working remotely is ever going to be a real possibility. But because ours is a very people business, people do need to meet, people do need to connect, and it's a very teamwork oriented thing. A lot of it can happen remotely, but some of it happens better when you are face to face, right? So I think the new normal, whenever it happens 24 months later or so, you'll find offices have lots of meeting rooms, lots of pods, lots of areas where people can come together, and maybe lesser seats. So let's say there are 1,000 people in an office, maybe it has only 200 or 300 seats. So I think that's the way the direction is going to take in my mind.
And I've heard you speak at different forums, and in general what the common consensus is that advertising, like for us as an economy to recover, advertising has to drive demand and consumption. And I think you, in our past session also, you'd mentioned some suggestions on how we could trigger consumption or how we could trigger demand. So what is the role you think agencies can play in this whole cycle, and how can agencies help brands to start thinking outside the box while staying inside this box? And what is the recovery curve you see? Like we were talking about a V-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery. Do you see any specific model of recovery for us from now as like the advertising and marketing industry?
Look, I think the recovery, there is a belief that people have that there is going to be a particular date and everything is going to come back to normal. I don't think that's going to happen, right? I don't. It's not as if on 1st of June everything is going to come back. Forget it, right? It's going to happen in stages. Production which is shut, labor which has gone back, factories which are closed. Even for them to come back to where they were in Jan-Feb, which in itself wasn't a very great position because, as you know, India was already slowing down even before the COVID situation. Just to do that is going to take 6 months. So I'm not a very big believer of this, V-shaped sudden recovery. There will definitely be a recovery, but I think even the recovery will be in phases. It will be coming up as things start opening up and so on. There will be two obstacles to the recovery, and whether it is V-shaped or U-shaped or W-shaped will depend upon how these two obstacles are handled. one very big obstacle which we are underestimating is actually going to be liquidity, right? If I am a client, will I first pay off my salaries? Will I first pay off my rentals? Will I first pay off my start my factory and spend on that? Or will I first want to start advertising? So I think that, and liquidity is going to be in short supply, and I'm going to want that the 100 rupees that I have, I'm using it most effectively, and it's giving me the bigger bang for the buck, right? So that's going to be one obstacle. The second biggest obstacle is going to be demand. So there is going to be a lot of pent up demand, because for 2 months, 3 months, people have not been able to buy anything. They will be, right? There is also a concept which I'm seeing in China called revenge buying. So for example, the Hermes showroom, which opened, luxury brand, super, expensive and so on the very first day that it opened in China, it sold $2.7 million US dollars worth of stuff from one store alone, because there was that little bit of a pent up buying which people went out and did it. So there will be that pent up buying that will initially happen, but subsequently, for it to sustain, you've got to generate demand, you've got to generate consumption, right? So far we have a supply side problem. People want to buy things, but there's no supply available. Shops are closed, production is closed, etc. As soon as it opens, there'll be a lot of pent up demand. Everybody whose mobile phone is spoiled, whose computer is spoiled, whose shirt is torn, etc., wants bought something, will go out and buy it. But what happens after that? What happens after 2, 3, 4 months when that pent up demand is gone? Then you've got to generate demand, and that's where advertising has a huge role to play. Agencies have to now start telling their clients to start thinking. So this mode was a survival mode. Everybody had to survive. Everybody had to, nobody was thinking long term. You were thinking, how do I get out of this? Because jaan hai to jahan hai. Pehle first let me survive. Let the business health be good. Then I'll see how to get about it. I think now the thinking has to change, that nothing has fundamentally changed in this country. We still have 130 crore people who are going to buy toothpaste, who are going to buy soaps, who are going to buy motorbikes, who are going to buy cars, and overall an economy which in the long run will do better than most other places would. We have everything right for us, right? So it should not only be a doom and gloom view. Okay? Agencies have to start telling their clients this is going to be a hard battle. I feel clients are first going to come in by performance-related advertising, which which relates in to immediate sales. So I think, because the first thing, and this links to the earlier point of liquidity, the first thing will be, let the cycle start running, let the cash flow start running, right? So therefore, anything that you can give to your client which will get him quick offtake and therefore get him or her to get money flowing into their business, I think will help them gain confidence, so that they can then start thinking of brand building, thinking of longer term stuff. And when we open, you'll see a lot of performance related advertising coming in. Agencies have a big role to play in giving the confidence to their clients, giving them ideas as to how they can do it, and most of all, themselves staying positive, because agencies have been badly hit. Every agency, big or small, has been badly hit in this period, right? Because the total pie of advertising has significantly shrunk. In the month of April compared to last year, my estimate is that for the industry, it's probably 60% down, right? So 50 to 60% down from the previous year. So it's almost been a debacle, right? So we ourselves have to now start feeling a little more confident, feeling a little more positive, and have to start looking forward, because like I've always said, it's going to be a long dark tunnel, but there is going to be light at the end of this tunnel. And I think we're getting nearer to the beginning of the end of this in that sense. So we must keep our spirits high and communicate that to our clients as well.
Yeah. And like in your past conversations also, you've mentioned that how, like, you as a bigger network or as a bigger agency, you already have some standard procedures which were passed on to you, or you might have a foresight into some of the challenges which agency leaders might have to face even in the coming times. So there are some challenges which are there right in front of you, but then there are some challenges which might be there in the hindsight, or which might be developing. So what are some of those challenges you think agency leaders should be prepared for?
First of all, we're going to have a confidence issue, right? For any agency leader to be able to invest, and our biggest investments are in people as an industry, he or she will need to have the confidence that, look, let me make that investment, business will come back. And I am urging through this and even otherwise to all my friends in the industry, have the confidence, business will come back, right? We're going to have a big problem on talent. The short term issues will go away, right? Everybody at some stage. At the moment, nobody might, I mean, jobs are going to be hard to find. That's definitely going to happen. There's going to be a lot of, people are worried that will I lose my job? There are salary cuts being talked about, etc., etc. So a lot of that is happening and is going to happen probably in the short run. But at the end of it, once things settle down and a new normal comes in, like you said, we need the best quality people to be in this industry. And I think that's going to be the single biggest challenge that industry leaders need to focus on, because we've not been great at this. We've always been good at poaching from each other. We've never been able to grow the universe. And I have to say that the quality of people coming into advertising, whether it is digital, whether it's anything, is worse than the quality of people going out. I think we used to get a better quality. I mean, a few years ago, not few now, maybe a couple of decades ago, when I used to be in the Lintas management board, we used to go to IIM, and we were a day one company on IIM, Indian Institute of Management. I think over a period of time, successively it went from day one to day two, day three. Then agency said, okay, let's go to second rung MBA institutes. Then they said, okay, third rung. Then we said, okay, let's go to graduate. So successively, the top talent, which is because new opportunities came up, went to the Googles and to the Facebooks and to the Citibanks and to the McKinseys, etc., and didn't come to advertising. That's the biggest obstacle we need to focus on. So build confidence. First of all, build confidence in yourself, build confidence with your clients, because they will need handholding and support. They've been hit really, really hard at this time. And invest in good quality talent. You can never go wrong if you do that.
Right.
I'm just interrupting you, Hitesh, because I've just seen a comment by Kulesh Mehra, who says that taking leave is not a big shot. You have to take in that you are bragging. So I just want to tell him that I'm not bragging. I'm just stating a fact that, and that's not the right thing, and nobody should do it. I just want to clarify. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that that was what I was. I had never worked from home. I was one of those, who would always want to get to office, and I was wrong in doing that. I'm not the best example. You sort of alluded to that, of a work-life balance and so on and so forth. I'm not a great example of that, and I didn't intend that as a bragging, but I was just stating a fact that is what it was. I had never worked from home, and now, and I didn't think it was possible, but now I can see that a lot of it is indeed possible. So I just wanted to clarify that to Kulesh, since I saw that comment.
Yeah. So speaking of talent and the quality of talent, you, like in our last conversation, I remember you had mentioned that this is a time for agencies also to look out for good talent and probably stand by people who are great at work and might be in a bad situation at this point in time. And a lot has been spoken about agencies laying off people, but at the same time, a lot of agencies are hiring, and there are joinings happening from home. So what is your advice to the talent out there? Because like there is a lot of pressure on them on adapting to this new normal. They might also have some concerns with regards to the kind of mental, like they might have some mental health concerns as well. So what is your advice for talent to tide through these times and ensure that their career paths are also not affected drastically with something like this?
Look, there is a short term and there is a long term. In the short term, there is pain. When something of this level happens, a pandemic, a global pandemic, which is then leading to a financial crisis in most places, etc., it is unreasonable to expect that people will be unaffected. I think everybody, senior, junior, good quality talent, bad quality talent, big companies, small companies, mid companies, everybody will be impacted. By and large, in India, most companies, I think, will try to give a little bit of pain to a lot of people rather than target a few people and sack them. Maybe there will be layoffs, and business realities will definitely be there to an extent. It's not a great time to be looking for a job, and it's not going to be improving that much until the business sort of picks up. So that's a short-term issue. In the long run, I believe this is a great industry, which is why I'm in it. 32, 33 years I've spent in it. I love it. If I were to relive my life again, the only profession I would consider is advertising, and I really believe in it, and I do believe that this has a future, but you have to adapt, you have to reskill. So one thing was that, earlier you learned a skill and that lasted you for rest of your life. You became better and better at it, etc., etc. I think those days are now gone. Every 5 years you're going to have to unlearn and relearn, right? Because the pace of change is rapidly increasing, and the talent that you're talking about, what can they do in times like this? I think they can upskill themselves. All of us need to constantly keep upskilling ourselves. There is so much learning that is now available through online courses, through the internet, sitting at home, etc., etc. I think keep building up skills. Try to predict what are the skills that are going to be useful later on. For example, not knowing coding is, which I don't know coding, for example, I think is a big disadvantage. If I were younger and if I were reliving my life, and in fact, I'm already trying to pick up some of it, it's almost like not knowing how to read and write today. And it doesn't mean that you have to become a digital expert um, uh, or the world's best coder or take coding as your profession, but not knowing it is a disadvantage in if somebody young person is starting his career today, even if he or she is a copywriter or a visualizer or whatever, I would say learn coding, because that is, that's a skill set that you're going to need. Maybe 5 years later there'll be another skill set that you will need, and it doesn't matter what language you learn, languages will keep changing, but at least the basics of it, right? So I would say keep upskilling yourself, keep building generalist skills and highly focused specialist skills as well. Because as we go into more turbulent times, two kinds of skills are going to be required. One are going to be generalist skills, managing people, managing turmoil, managing time and business, difficult circumstances like these where you're working from home, etc. So you need to build your people in generalist skills on that. But then at the same time, you need to build some highly specialist skills, because a specialist always earns more than a generalist. You go to a GP and you go to a cardiac surgeon, who do you think you would be paying more to, right? The risk in specialism is that from specialism you become into super specialisms, and then you become very narrow, and then that whole field might suddenly change, which is why the need to unlearn and relearn. So I would say be positive. It's a great profession. It will, no 2 days will be alike, and you'll really enjoy your ride, but think of it from a long-term perspective. It's a great career, not a great job to have, because there's a problem that youngsters coming in today. I'll share with you a statistic of which we had done for the industry. We done for our company, and then we try to do it for the industry. Almost 47, but let's say half the people who join advertising leave advertising in 2 years. I'm not saying leave the company. They leave advertising in 2 years. Almost 75% of the people who join advertising leave advertising in 5 to 7 years, right? 75%. But those who then go beyond the 7 years, there is very little drop rate. They spend almost all their lives in advertising, right? Now, this is it's a very silly thing to do, because the hardest part in advertising is the early part of your career. You're slogging like hell. You're at the bottom of the food chain, and you're paid not that greatly, right? And then there comes a time when there's an inflection point, and your value to the company goes up, your learning goes up, and then everything, your remuneration, everything goes up. Now, people are spending 5 years going through the ragda, getting disillusioned, and then when it's time for them to start reaping the benefit, they're leaving the industry. Now, so be sure when you're getting into this industry, because it's not going to be easy. We are a service industry. It is a high pressure, deadline oriented industry, and it's not for everybody, right? But if you are sure that this is what your calling is, I guarantee you'll enjoy it. I guarantee you'll do well. I guarantee you will make, you'll do good work. And if you do it with passion, and you will make, I mean, it's not like merchant banking or something like that, but you'll be reasonably well paid. But you have to have the tenacity to go through that period, and keep reskilling and upskilling yourself. Many people ask me what's the best quality for being in advertising, and everybody assumes the answer will be you have to be a creative person and so on. That's not true. To my mind, the the one criteria that separates out a good advertising person from a damn good advertising person is ability to withstand stress. Because every day you feel you get new challenges, and you have to bring the same A game, the same enthusiasm day in and day out for 30, 40 years, right? And that takes a lot of tenacity. So if you're not tenacious, there's no glamour in this business. All those things, there'll be lots of good models and glamour, etc. Forget it. You need passion, you need tenacity, and you need to enjoy yourself, because that's the one thing this profession gives you. It allows you to enjoy yourself.
Right. And like they say, there's no high like this high, I believe. So I think we'll take some questions from comments and then probably conclude the session. Guys, if you have any other questions, you can now put in, if in case I've missed it on the feed. So Amitava Mitra, he's asking, the problems of work from home will be monitoring work, the touch and feel, since our business is very people-led, technology, security, ideas. How does one overcome this? Our product is our ideas, are creative. So how do we ensure confidentiality and like how do we avoid misuse?
Hi, Amitabh. I think on the confidentiality part, let me take that first. There is technology today. I mean, nothing is perfect, and even banks can be hacked. So it's not as if it is foolproof. But there are a lot of firewalls and safety precautions, etc. If work from home is going to become a norm, I think companies are going to have to gear up. Uh, who are you? Likely to what machines do you allow to use, who do you give access to your firewalls, etc., etc. But I think technology will find a solution for that part, so I'm not that very worried about it. What are the first part of the question, Hitesh? What did you say?
So the first part of the question was like the problems are around monitoring work and the use of technology, because at the end of the day, our product is our ideas, and like how do you ensure that creativity thrives in such an environment, work from
I
home?
think creativity finds a way to thrive. There will be better and better technology available. I mean, you've seen how the value of Zoom has zoomed up, right? Because it was technology that facilitated work from home. Now you will find 1,000 startups coming up, which will give you tools that will make work from home better in the long run as you go by. But like I said, you cannot. I don't believe that the best solution is to be absolutely remote and be working only from home. I think the best solution probably lies in a mixture of both. So there are some things that can be done remotely, and perhaps those will be done and should be done remotely. But there are many things that might still need interaction, like you said, creativity to thrive through face-to-face collaboration, maybe certain types of production, maybe certain important meetings, etc. I think that we'll have to find the right balance for both. And I think once we're out of this emergency phase, and once we're, I only hope that, so there'll be phases, right? At the moment we're in a survival mode, then we will get into this, okay, let's hustle bustle, let's try to do everything, let's try to get business back to where it was, kind of a phase. And then there will be a new normal, a normal on that. My only hope is that our memories tend to be very short. We don't miss this. They say every crisis is a great opportunity, that we don't miss and lose this crisis. When that phase happens, whether it is 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, when everything is back to normal, we shouldn't forget about this. So we should try to get the learnings from this and get to a synthesis and get to a scenario where we're getting to the best of both the worlds, so to speak.
Okay. So Aniket Sinha is asking, is telling, hey Ashish, thanks for the great insights today. Can you throw some light on how performance side of business is going to win more percentage of brand budgets in today's day and age?
Look, the one thing, if I'm a client or if you are a client, anybody who's a client will want to know, my dollar, my rupee is today more precious than what it was 3 months ago, because I have less of those rupees. There's a liquidity problem. I'm not having enough sales. So one thing I want to know is that if I'm investing that money or spending that money, I am indeed getting return on my investment, right? I want to be 100% sure of that. And the one place where I will want to put it is where performance in some way, that it leads to performance, it leads to a sale, it leads to whatever I need to do. So two things will happen. One is, in the initial burst, there will be a lot of emphasis on promotions, performance, quick sales, kind of a thing. But in general, a trend that will also happen because of this is already starting to happen, that clients will start demanding much more accountability and much more return on investment. And that's where I have a grouse to pick with all of us who are a part of the ecosystem in digital. The most measured system is digital, right? You can measure everything, but we haven't agreed either on a common metric or on a common currency for it in the most measured medium. Somebody tells you if you watch 3 seconds of my ad, it's a view. Somebody says 10 seconds of our ad, it's a view. Somebody says so many pixels. We as an industry need to come together and agree upon a basic metric, and we need to agree on a common currency. I mean, good or bad, BARC is a common currency for television. IRS is a common currency for print. We haven't yet evolved that for digital. And I'm hopeful, like from every crisis comes an opportunity. I'm hopeful that in the next 18 to 24 months, we will be able to do that, because clients will demand a lot more return on investment, for which you will need a lot more of data to prove that.
Right. So we'll just take last two questions. One being, so this is from Lavin Meer Chandani. What business engagement models will we see resuming post COVID-19? I understand several retainers have stopped across agencies. Will brands come back with full-fledged retainer models, or will we see newer creative models of engagement emerge to manage liquidity? So his point is that, would you see that retainer as a model gets, like, it will continue, or you will see some other models?
There are going to be 2 or 3 types of clients. There's one type of client who are committed to advertising, understand that advertising is an integral part of their product in some sense, and they value it and they look at long-termness of it. For example, a lot of FMCG players, I would say, fall in that category. And they were actually continuing to advertise, some of them at least in this period, because their products were being distributed even in that. I think they will probably continue similar business practices as before, perhaps renegotiate, because this is a new world, and perhaps so that will happen. But a lot more of project related work will now come up, because a lot of people will not want to commit fixed costs from their point of view. Like, I don't want to pay 40 lakhs a month to an agency, but I don't mind paying a particular amount for doing a particular project. So there'll be that type of client. So it'll be a mixture of all. I think from an agency perspective, one thing we have to learn as agencies, and we are bad at that, we don't value our time. We give a lot of our time away free, because we don't even have proper time sheets. And you call up a lawyer, even the call that he does with you, he'll send you a bill for that, right? We've got ourselves to a scenario where a lot of clients just assume that it is fine to tap an agency for strategy and for ideas, and do jab campaign hogi to wo anyway wo kuch kar lega, right? And we are to blame for it, because we've not valued that. I hope that agencies start valuing that, start putting a price to it, and therefore that should be a part of the new model. So maybe the fees might come lower, but then the deliverables should come lower. The time amount of manpower time that you're spending on that should also come lower. That could be a part of a negotiation. On the other hand, maybe you can add value that, okay, you're paying this fees, but I'm giving you this additional benefit for it. Don't reduce my fees. Let's do it this way. Maybe some agencies, and I hope this happens soon, will start taking a stake in the client's growth. So, okay, you want performance, pay me for your performance. If your business is going to do well, give me more. And likewise, if it doesn't do well, there should be a penalty on me. So I think a lot of these new models will emerge as we go by. And particularly the new age clients will adopt these first.
Sure. And so this is one last thing to conclude also. And I'm trying to take a gist of the questions which are there. So what is your advice and tips for agency leaders? Like, you can just split these tips across network agency leaders, or even independent agency leaders, and smaller agencies which are like small shops, like probably 3 to 5 years old, less than 50 people teams, and so on.
Look, it doesn't matter whether you're big, small, medium, or whatever. Everybody is hit in this, and therefore my advice is consistent to everybody, right? First thing is, look after the health of your business. If there are tough decisions that need to be taken, take them. Don't postpone them, right? You have to, any wasteful expenses, any discretionary expenses, anything that you can do without, this is the time to tighten your belt, because it's a difficult period. Do that. But while you're doing that, do remember and do be positive that there is a revival that is coming. Cut out the fat, but don't cut out the muscle. There will be an upswing that will happen. Whether it happens in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, everybody is conjecturing. My own sense is that we will really start seeing it only around Diwali. It's not going to happen on the day. I mean, things will start getting better, but the process of real normalization will start around the Diwali period. In any case, between Ganpati and New Year, almost 40% of advertising spend happens in India. Let's focus on that. Let's give our clients encouragement. Let's make that a big season. And agent leaders have a role in giving confidence to their people and to the clients in that sense. So concentrate on that. And the third thing is concentrate on efficiency and great talent. So there will be areas where you probably have to automate. There will be areas, as an industry, we are very unstructured. Maybe we need to bring in a little bit of structuring. And the monies that you save through those efficiencies, invest it in best quality talent. Need not necessarily be from the agency ecosystem. Maybe there's great talent that is lying outside the industry, which we need to bring in. But concentrate on that, because that's the only long-term insurance that this industry has for sustained growth. Great quality people will make sure that we have great quality businesses as we go ahead. So those would be my tips. And frankly, for that, it doesn't matter whether you're a big agency, medium agency, or small agency. Your scale might differ, but the same issues will be there.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ashish, for sparing our time for this. I'm sure people have got enough and more takeaways from the session.